Welcome to From Doubt to Destiny,
the podcast where dreams come alive. I'm Eden Ryder, the Dream Maker.
And I'm Stacie Trott, the Queen Maker. We're here to give your dreams the royal treatment that they deserve. Get ready to unlock your queen
and unleash her dreams.
We are back to From Doubt to Destiny. I'm Stacie Trott.
And I'm Eden Ryder.
Thank you for joining us today. And today we are going to have a conversation about, I struggled between two words, the uncomfortableness of growth, or probably more easily said, the discomfort of growth. So growth is something we know we need to do. Hopefully we've all physically gone through a growth process, but we're talking about more probably a maturation and a growing that requires a stretching, and it is voluntary. So you have to choose it, and then you have to be willing to go through the pain associated with it. So that's our topic for today. Every episode is going to have a topic, some tension around it. We're going to discuss hopefully transformational thoughts either we've had or we discover in the course of our conversation, and then some takeaways, things that we are discovering from this conversation or things that we do that we are sharing for the benefit of you to give a try, put on a list, have a chat with a friend. So let's talk about the uncomfortableness of growth. I would say that I am very uncomfortable. I'm in a season of constant discomfort. And I feel like on some level, I don't know if I create it, but I definitely probably for the last several years have said yes to it. So I don't know that I manufacture it, but what about you, Eden? What's your relationship with discomfort?
Absolutely. I would say I have been going through a ton of discomfort in the past 2 years. However, most recently, I'd say especially in the past probably maybe like 6 months or so, I think I'm moving through it so much quicker, or like just realizing I have to do it. So I'm moving through it so much faster, and then I think it allows you to see results. So it doesn't feel as uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Like a muscle that you're exercising.
Yes, exactly.
I think when I first exercise is a good one for me. When I first got into the routine of working out consistently, it was painful. And I remember I was like sore every day. And now I'm like, I'm good. I can have a tough workout and I might feel a little bit of discomfort, but it's like a level 2, whereas it used to feel like 8s and 9s. And it was more my body getting used to being in a cycle of allowing the muscles to tear and then be regenerated and grow. So I think that's great that we're both definitely probably the phrase get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We're probably both comfortable with the discomfort, which means there's a lot of growth happening, which is a good thing. I think you've shared already before, you packed a lot into a very tight period of time. You're like, let's get married and have a baby, and then I'll start a new business and quit my job. And like all of that happens probably in like a 6 to 9 month window. Is that right? Yeah. So that was a lot of growing and stretching, and you don't have to pack it all in that way, but I think you got a lot of fruit from that season of exponential growth, right? And now here you are pregnant with baby number 2, and I can't wait to meet him. So do you feel like you're in another pocket of accelerated growth?
Absolutely. Because again, I think I packed it all together. Again, just with us like moving to Toronto and being pregnant and starting my coaching certifications, us starting this podcast, like doing all the things. They're all good things, but yeah, so definitely in another pocket. But this pocket is, again, I'm moving through it faster or just getting to the discomfort because I know it's necessary, where a lot of it of like I don't know what to do, and like where it was kind of like I'd have progression, then I'd stop and I'd keep kind of like put my foot on the gas and let go. The learning, I think, happened a lot in that first pocket of time.
You mean when you did let's get married, have the baby, and I'll
quit my job
and start being an entrepreneur. Yeah. And taking therapy in the midst of all that, so I can just like figure out how to deal with my underlying issues that I thought I had resolved. Yeah, I think that it's probably, I was just thinking there are times in my life where, when, as an example, when I went to law school, I went to law school at night and I had a full-time job. And I was probably more productive in that season because it was so packed in. So there wasn't any room for procrastination or fluff. And I was able to grow quicker when it was packed in than if I kind of was like, well, I can only focus on one thing at a time. And I get the sense that when you're like, let me just kind of move a bunch of balls forward at once, you actually probably are almost more productive because of the fact that there isn't room for fluff than if you are like, I'll just do one thing. Almost
Hmm.
like you can't quite get the traction you need to have everything firing at the same time. So I think probably the reason why true growth is uncomfortable is because you need to be like almost a little bit packed in order to kind of like, let's get it going, let's get it moving. I have a girlfriend who leads a team, full-time job, sometimes, works long hours and weekends, and she's a mom and she's in school. And it's like, I'm sure there's times where she's like, why on earth do I have so much on my plate? But then she's in probably one of the most productive moments and phases of her life. So I think the discomfort of growth, one element that I would say is, this ties into a topic that, we're at some point maybe going to discuss. It's almost kind of a permutation of having it all at the same time. Like, let me just pack a few things in. And it's not like haphazard, but it's like, I want to move this ball forward. I want to move this ball forward. I want to move this ball forward. And they don't have to wait in line. It can
Mm-hmm.
be, there can be some momentum. Okay, one of the things that we talked about, it was on our list of topics of things we wanted to discuss, and we decided to marry these two topics. And one is, as like subtopics underneath the discomfort of growth, is outgrowing rooms, people, places, things, or rooms is kind of the things. And part of growth has been for me where I can see I'm growing past the maybe I'll call it peer group that I'm in. And there's some discomfort there because when I've been really almost like, it's like smacking me in the face that I'm almost uncomfortable continuing to be where I am, and the conversations I'm having and the spaces that I'm in are, I can almost feel like I'm just floating beyond them, or like, they're here and I'm like, I just really want to go here. And, there's been moments where I've thrown like a cop topic or a conversation out in a group of people, and you can see they're kind of like, why on earth is she talking about this? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's not for this group. I can see. So, outgrowing people, places, and things. Have you had kind of any experience and exposure? And I'm just asking because I already know the answer, but for the benefit of our listeners, how have you dealt with that, where you realize I'm growing at a pace that's different than the spaces and the places and the peer groups that I'm currently in relationship with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also had a lot to do, kind of, we mentioned even our vision for like this podcast and like creating community. I was
Mm-hmm.
in a space of, I just got married, I just had a baby, I quit my corporate job, I was leaning into entrepreneurship, when all of a sudden I was like, I'm going through all these things and like I don't feel like I have anywhere to turn.
Mm-hmm.
So I 100% sensing it. I don't know if I knew, like, could put a word or like a name on what I was feeling at the time, other than like, who do I talk to talk about this? And like, I thankfully had just started therapy, so I was talking about it. And then it was, I think the next iteration was feeling as though once I realized I had nobody to talk to, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to like pay to
Yeah.
have access to the people or the rooms or the network or the information that
Yep.
I need, which was also uncomfortable in and of
Mm-hmm.
itself, because it was
Mm-hmm.
like it didn't make sense of that in one world of Eden of like very weighing like risk and like you just quit a job, you just had a baby, like you have a lot of financial, like a lot of responsibility, where I'm like, you just started therapy, which is a cost and all of these
Mhm.
things. And now I'm like, I then decided to get a coach. I like went to like create and cultivate events, like stuff like that, where I don't know, it's all, I guess, uncomfortable because I recognize I am outgrowing the rooms, or like I don't have anyone to turn to in the network I had prior to, but then not knowing where to go and then thinking the next step is like, oh, I'm gonna have to throw money at it, but that's not what I have right now.
Yeah.
So like, other than like, there's been like some also like, I think I dive into, I love learning, so I'm a big like reader and like looking on YouTube and stuff like that. But short answer, yes, I've definitely experienced it. I still continue to. I just think I'm now, it's evolving and but I also, yes, I feel like I've invested a lot. Like I definitely, I look at it as an investment like in myself, but I definitely have paid to get access to the women. And I think even also talking and sharing like us creating this and like now I feel more fulfilled, even like the conversations that we have and the things we're doing. So it's now snowballing and I'm seeing the effects of those investments.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at first it was like super scary, super uncomfortable, and like questioning like, am I nuts, or is this like also completely, I don't know, irresponsible at times, like thinking like you know, like you are newly married, like you're like raising a family, is now the time to like make this risk and just
Yeah.
start like throwing money at things, not knowing exactly where it's headed, I guess.
So what I'm hearing is that I'm already at a takeaway, and one of the takeaways is you might have to pay to move to the next level. And when we were talking about this, I was like, you were in a season of seeding, investing in yourself, and investment usually comes with a cost, time, money. And you didn't have a plethora of either since you were a new wife and a new mom, but you were like, you had this, you were being drawn to grow. And so while you had taken on what should have had, which should have felt like a full plate, if you had intellectually said, I got to learn this wife thing, I got to learn this mom thing, but you were like, there's more. And so in my head, when I think about you, I think about when you were like, um, I had it clear. I was going to be a wife and I was going to be a mom, and that was it. And then you were like, once I got them, these two words, there's more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe if there was an encouragement and a takeaway is you may have to pay to upgrade to the next level. And if you're feeling like that's what's required, you're feeling right. Move in the direction. And it doesn't necessarily make sense, especially if you're in a season where the output is exceeding
Mm-hmm.
the outflow is exceeding the inflow, and it seems like maybe I should wait until it. No, I remember when I was deciding on law schools. I had gotten a full scholarship to a tier 2 school, and I had gotten nothing from a tier 1 school, but the tier 1 school was where I wanted to go. And my boss at the time was a lawyer, and I said, well, maybe I should just, take this full scholarship because it's so much money. And he said, go to the best school that you can get into. The investment you're making in yourself will pay for itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took on, all this debt to go to law school on top of the debt I had from undergrad. And the multiples of returns that have come from that investment I made in myself almost 20 years ago has definitely produced the fruit. And, you're already seeing a measure of the fruit that you've put in. And I want to add to that because yesterday we were talking and your husband popped in and he was chatting, and I was like, your investment in yourself has also been an investment in your partner. And I mean, I've known Steph longer than you have, so I've seen exponential growth in the 5 years. Is it 5 or more now?
Going on 6, but yeah, 5.5.
Yeah, 5 and change years that you have been in his life versus the 15 years before that I've known him. And not that he didn't do some good things for himself and grow, and he went to school and did these things, but there's a rapid growth. And it just makes me think about how women are creators, and how I think the Bible talks about a woman being able to like exponentially produce. So I just would say in this topic of discomfort, uncomfortableness of growth, that it's like, heck yeah, lean all the way into the the discomfort of growth, because the fruit of what can come from it is exponential compared to the pain. The
Mm-hmm.
benefits outweigh the pain. And last night I was working till 3 o'clock in the morning. That was not fun. But the fruit that comes from the hard work is definitely beyond the sacrifices that you have to make. So discomfort, outgrowing rooms. How have you dealt with I think you said this, right? There are people that you love dearly, but you can tell that you're not feeling a level of stretch and challenge in communication with them. And so now you're feeling like, I love you, but I need to decrease the amount of communication we have because I need to make room for these places and spaces I'm going. And that requires time. So I need less time to chat and I need more time to execute. How have you kind of managed the delicateness of that?
I actually literally just brought it up in therapy recently because I definitely struggle with it. I think I was placing a lot of judgment on it, like feeling guilty or feeling like it means like probably goes back to the whole like good girl thing and like just all of that, but of like maybe something's wrong with me because like I'm thinking about people differently. I'm like, it doesn't mean I still like love all these people like unconditionally and would be there with them in a second, like for a second.
Yes.
Or what you know what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say.
yeah. You'd show up at a place if they needed you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was just like this guilt of feeling like, but I should be doing again all the shoulding of
All the
like all
shitting.
of that. So I brought it up in
Mhm.
therapy recently and trying to think succinctly of what we kind of talked about, but taking off all of that like
Mhm.
expectation, because even
Mhm.
having that expectation or placing it on it, you're not necessarily doing it for like from
Yeah.
the most.
You're not doing it from a place of love and
Yes,
honor.
exactly. If you're doing
Yeah.
it, if you are doing because you feel like you should, it's not coming from that place. So I would say some of it kind of, at first they probably forced it of like just
Mhm.
making sure like I'm checking my boxes of like
Yeah.
being a good friend and like doing all
Yeah.
the things. But again, that's probably my own ego of making sure I'm
Yeah.
making what Eden does, Eden's still doing.
Like you want to give yourself an A for being a good
Yes,
friend. So it's,
exactly.
it's
Like,
it's not even about you. I'm just wanting to make sure I'm evaluating that I'm doing a good job.
yes. But then the more I think again, kind of like you said, when you get I'm doing a lot and it's all very fulfilling. And again, I'm always like, I'm very big on like sending out love and I'm always thinking of everybody. But it actually got to a point where it naturally progressed of there's so much going on that like the time is so much more limited in general. So
Mhm.
more chunks of time would go by that it kind of worked itself out. And then
Yeah.
I also realized in talking therapy and just thinking about it more, like the people that like I genuinely love and we've been there for each other forever, no matter what, like when we do catch up, it is
It's
like
like no time
it's
has
like
passed.
nothing has gone
Yes.
by.
Yes.
We're all like everyone's like living their own life. Like they have so much going on.
Mhm.
And I think the
Mhm.
older you get in general, like you're just so much busier, like work.
Yes. And
So
that it's a natural byproduct of growing up.
yes. So it's not as it seems a lot more serious and like heavy. Like where I think it's
In here.
uncomfortable, it's all in your head though. Like I
Yeah.
think you're creating narratives, creating stories,
Yeah.
and as long as again it's not like I don't know, like our boundaries conversation of where like
Yeah.
something's actually happening where you need to stop it. Like this isn't it's just it's natural. Like I wish
Correct.
it's escaping me now because in therapy it was the exact statement he used, which I loved of just that maybe it'll come to me by the end of this. I'm gonna blame this on pregnancy brain, but
Yeah. Which is a real thing, by the way.
yes.
It's a real thing.
So it like the people who are meant to be like in your life at the time, and the reason why you're crossing paths is because of where you are and where you're at, and it doesn't devalue or undo any of those prior relationships or where you were at, because they also got you to where you are today. He actually had a great analogy of like Zaria, like right now at her age, if she was going to school and like preschool or whatever, she'd make friends at the capacity that her little brain at this point can make friends.
Mhm.
But then
Mhm.
as she evolves and goes to each level, like she's going to make different relationships and different, and
Yep.
like some of them may stay,
Oh yeah,
but
that's a great one. Yeah,
she's not,
yeah.
but like
Mhm.
if Zaria stayed at her brain capacity now and
Mhm.
stayed there with those friends, and then as she grew was staying
Mhm.
at that like level of
Mhm. A
like he's
play
like
and
so
interaction. Yeah, yeah,
exactly, like so
totally. Yeah.
it's natural, it's not
Yeah.
a bad thing. And then he also mentioned, I was kind of confusing it with like allegiance,
Yes. Like a
and that like
loyalty issue.
yes, where like
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
my only allegiance is like to my purpose, to God, like to that, and like,
Yeah.
you know, like my family, like people can be a part of that, but the only
Yes.
allegiance I have is to that, and all of these other,
Yes.
like I'm confusing two things which are very
Yes.
different. So
Yeah, you want to show up for the people in your life and you want to stay connected and you want to be there. But also, as additional responsibilities come on our plate, right? The responsibilities we have in our 20s typically are very different than we get to our 30s, and expands when you get to your 40s. And I'm expecting it'll evolve in my 50s. And so, as a result of that, you have to understand that there are people that are relationships that the depth and dimension of them are seasonal.
mhm.
And so there's going to be, and I don't think that we're kind of taught that. I don't remember ever really being taught that. And so when you develop some bonds and connections, especially through those teenage and early adult years, you think we're going to be friends forever and it's always going to be like this. And then you add additional people in, and so those relationships have to shift and change to make room for the responsibilities and the other connections and relationships. Um, and it's God, and then your relationship should be with your partner if you're married, that your spouse, then it's your kids, and that relationship orientation needs to be,
Mhm.
yes, kids are important, but if you prioritize them over the relationship, you'll end up having no relationship. And they're
Mhm.
going to go out into the world and have their own lives, and then you'll look at each other and be like, I forgot to invest in this, and now I don't know if I really know you or like you. So that can be a real problem. So
Absolutely.
God, and then your marriage, and then the kids, and then everything else, purpose, and however you're supposed to show up in the world comes behind that. And then mixed in there somewhere are the friendships and the extended family and the other things that you want to feed. And you've got to figure out, and I think I say sometimes I respond to the thing that screams the loudest. I say the baby that screams the loudest because that's what it makes you think of. I only have the one, but I could imagine as you're about to have two different humans that are going to require your attention, you're probably going to give attention to whoever is having the largest
Mhm.
expression of emotion, right? So there's going to be a shift for Zaria for a season where she's just not going to be the first priority because this other little human can do nothing for itself, whereas there are a lot things that she can do for
Yeah.
herself now. So there's a shift and adjustment. It's very similar. You bring in a partner, and now you're in that relationship. By default, you're not gonna have much time for your girlfriends. Now you want to make sure you prioritize that, but it's not gonna be the same. But we're really talking about, yeah. So it's been tough. You figured it out. You've had to talk about it in therapy. I have as well. And so I guess another takeaway would be, we're not by any means saying this is an easy thing to do when you can sense that you're growing beyond the season and the place that you're in. So if you feel that and you sense that you were led to this podcast today, you're hearing this conversation, you may have been thinking, I feel like I'm needing to make a shift and some changes and I'm feeling guilty about it. We're here to encourage you. Don't feel guilty. It's a natural part of growth. And the discomfort and the uncomfortableness of growth, it's just to lead you to the next and the more. And you want to move in that direction. And the thought I just had was, there's a lot of your your group of people that you may be growing past in this moment will benefit if they're meant to still be connected to you in some permutation by your growth, right? I have more to give to
Mm-hmm.
those relationships when I do connect because of the growth. So I think it's really important. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think I don't remember who it was, probably a celebrity or someone. And then vaguely, I also feel like Michelle Obama has said something similar, but that basically, like a lot of times, you're almost like trying to get through this door and you want to bring everybody with you and you want like everyone to grow at the same time and like do it. But you can't a lot of times get them through unless you get like you need to get through the door first. Kind of like I think the oxygen mask, like all of
Yes.
that, like you
Yep.
need to at first just focus on you
Mm-hmm.
and your like evolution and your
Yeah.
growth. And then once you get through, it's going to be a lot easier to bring them through the door. So, like those who are meant to, or the growth,
Yeah.
like you don't need, but you need to just
And not everybody that,
will
where
make
you're going is
it.
not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's not going to go where you're going and or grow
Which
into
is
the space.
okay as
Yeah.
well. I think it's more all the judgment that we can place on it, or like again, those expectations, or that like everything's supposed to stay the same. And even for myself, I think at times of realizing, because I of like this idea of like your true self and like being authentic, but not holding on to either like any previous like version of yourself, like the expansion that
Mhm.
comes with like if I compare single Eden or Eden before being a
Mhm.
mom, and then if you start
Mhm.
comparing that and you're like, well, I lost this huge, if you're always comparing of like losing or trying to
Yeah.
hold on to the identity of yourself, like you won't ever be able to grow and evolve. Like I feel like there's so many iterations of you, and even like the dreams I have now is going to take another whole new identity of Eden that I'm starting to grasp certain things that I know I need to work on, or like those
Yeah.
uncomfortable things are coming up of like, oh, here we go again. Like we're
Can you
gonna
give me an
be
example of one of those that it's like, oh, I got to work on this. I can see it to take
well,
me to the next, to be able to function at the next level.
yeah. So it's again, to me, at times it sounds so silly, maybe because it's like uncomfortable for me. Although you might have a similar thing in your own way. Like for me right now, with like I'm finishing my coaching certification and I am starting my business in that regard, which is requiring me to show up a lot more on social media and share and talk more like live or share on the spot every day. And I normally don't, I would prefer to like edit and like think about it and make sure I'm saying all the right things and like check with people of like, is this right? And so even in the past week or two, like I've been challenging myself to share, and I have been, which it was wildly uncomfortable at first where I'm like, what the hell? And even like worrying about like I didn't do my makeup today, like I need like advanced notice if I'm like today, like I knew like you need to
Yeah.
shower, put makeup on, like
Yes.
be ready in advance, where I'm like, you know what, like we're just gonna give like the real, the raw, like I do not have my makeup today, but like this is on my mind and I'm going to share. So getting more used to that and not being so concerned about like editing myself and being so concerned about how is people going to perceive this, or like is this the right thing to say. So yeah, I
Let's
guess
pause
just
there for a second. You
yeah,
just said, is this the right thing to say? How about this is what I have to say?
exactly right. So
Right?
reframing that,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, reframing that because we talked about this off camera, but I can say here is that like you being able to say, okay, I have something. This is what I'm feeling led to say. And I don't need to get consensus
Hmm.
before I feel comfortable to say it.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully if someone's listening and struggles with that, they can be challenged by this moment to be able to say, you know what, I do that and I need to stop because what happens if the thing that you're supposed to say you can't find anyone to be in consensus with? Does it not still need to be said? And so we weren't born with like brains that are connected to other people so we can all get like group think before we can have an opinion or a thought. And so I believe when you're feeling like there's something I need to share and you're really like, yeah, this is it right here. This is what's on my mind. This is my heart. share it. It's for somebody. And if you had to wait for someone else or your village to be able to be like, yes, no. And then what happens when half is yes and half is no? Then what are we going
Right.
to do?
Yeah.
So consensus is really tough. And there are moments where it makes sense to get in a room and talk things through to get ideas out. But the season and space that you're in, it feels like I think God is leading you to trust that
Yeah.
He's leading you and you're moving in the direction that He's calling you to. And you have obnoxious faith that you're being led, which is one of my favorite phrases. And just trusting that you're being led.
Absolutely.
Trusting that you're being led. I don't know why this just came to me, but I think I told you the other day, this is something that I think about. Yes, I was texting you and I said this. You have this story that I think is worth sharing in this moment about you were in a space and place where you were in a relationship and your life just was not going in the direction that you thought it should go in. And you had this encounter at your church where you were like,
Yeah.
can you tell that story really quickly? Because I feel
Yeah.
like it just came to me that there
Interesting.
is a real thing about being led.
Yeah. So I was in, this is back before I moved to like the city. So I was back home, but in like a long-term relationship. I thought that was like the one, like all my
Mhm.
eggs were in that basket and some. Like basically, I was doing a lot of things, but like really waiting to start my life until it was like time.
Mhm.
And I was at church and there was this like random old guy. It sounds like I'm making this up. It's funny
No,
to say,
it's
'cause, like, I
I
think of
believe
your
you. I
husband
believe
who's
you.
like, that did not happen. And I'm like, it did.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I was at church and I like noticed this older gentleman and he kind of kept like staring at me like all service. And then, or it was either either all service or like before the service started. And he came over to me and was like, the relationship you're in right now, it's not going to work. However, like you're going to be okay. Like it, and I was just like, what the heck? Like I was so pissed off because I was like looking at my mom. They saw him talking to me, but no one heard it. And I'm
Mhm.
all like, what you put out there happened. So like, why are you putting that like over me? Like why I don't accept those words of
Right.
encouragement if that's what they are.
Right.
Um, but it was just very interesting because like how he said it and like it almost felt like surreal because I had never seen him again. Like, and he was like older, had like a beard. Like it was just so bizarre. But I don't know. And then at the
Say
same
what
time,
he
when
said again, because I got chills when you said it. He said,
he said the relationship you're in now isn't going to work out, but you're going to be okay. Or like you're going to be okay, or you're going to do great. Like something along those
mhm,
lines.
mhm, mhm.
And it's weird because then from that moment, I had already been having like these
Doubts.
doubts, I would say, and had already been being pulled into like other women and like even at church or like other women like speaking into my life, not even intentionally, but it's like inviting me to situations where conversations were happening. And
Mhm.
yeah, and I just remember after that, I don't know, yeah,
A lot
a
changed.
lot changed. And
Yeah.
then I think it was more again about being uncomfortable. I was like, you know what, I think that I've been so fixated on this picture I had in my head of like the way things were supposed to go. And
Yeah.
again, I was uncomfortable, but I was uncomfortable in the sense that I was stalling my growth, placing it all in another person's hands. Like it was all like, when he's ready,
He'll ask me to
I'm gonna be
marry.
ready. So I'm like, I have a good job. I'm successful at it. It's not where I want to be. Like I would not be here if it wasn't for him. Like I'm just waiting until it's like, okay, let's move in together. Let's do this. Let's get married. And then more that I reflect on it after the fact, it was like his dreams were being propelled forward no matter what. Like I was helping propel them forward and I was a part of it. But like my dreams were literally on a standstill. Like my life was revolving around
His life.
this happening and this, yes, like I can't say like I was living somewhere I didn't want to live. I was at a job I didn't want. I was doing all this holding pattern, waiting to start my life. And I realized in that moment, like, you're not living, like, you're living his dream. It's also made me think of actually, we both went to the Dave Chappelle thing, but like Dave Chappelle, like he says, like in every moment, like there's a dream and the biggest dream wins. So like, are you right now are you the star of your dream right now? Is this your dream? Or are you living someone else's dream?
Yes.
And I was very much not living like I wasn't the star of my movie, my dream. And
Mm.
I was in like a group after that, and it was this whole idea of like, what if rather than kind of giving your wish list of like what you want, what if you kind of like got still, prayed, asked God, or like whatever, went inward for like, what is my purpose, or what is designed for me? Like, what do you want from me? And once I started, I'm getting emotional, but once I started like
Asking that
asking that
question.
question, it's like everything shifted. Like
Yeah.
everything, I still desired all those things, but I realized I was like prematurely trying to like insert guy, insert whatever of just like this white picket fence. Like, I want this. But like, if you actually sit still and look at the reality of your situation, like you're growing opposite directions. This isn't really what you want. It's not like nourishing for you. It's not
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I don't know in what we were talking, like, so
You're
that
like, I
was
don't know how I
a
got
lot
here.
of growth. It was a ton of growth.
Yeah.
It was very
Hmm.
uncomfortable, and it was
Hmm.
interesting because it almost felt like, again, I think to your point though, like those people who have this word or that encouragement and they share it. And I'm not going to say that's where I was like, I was mad at him. So I wasn't in the moment like grateful or thankful. However,
But I see him as someone who was either God had a word of knowledge, which
yeah.
means God gave him insight about your life that he was not otherwise privileged to know.
Mhm.
And he took a step of boldness to come and tell you what he felt like God was telling him to say to you. And he was probably staring at you across the room and telling God, I'm not going over there and telling this girl what you're telling me to say because she's going to think I'm crazy. And so he was probably having an internal dialogue that was in resistance. And eventually he did it. And thank God for his obedience because it was a pivotal moment in your life and you remember it. And, you know, it reminds me of doing the thing, even when you don't want to. So he
Mhm.
was either that, a regular human, or he was an angel who was there for the moment to be sent with a word for you. And God chose to give you a human version of the manifestation of what he wanted you to hear because you wouldn't have heard it or received it any other way, right? He was
Yeah.
sending it to you in other signals, but you were like dismissing it, probably rationalizing it away. This is what I need. This is what I want. I'm in a holding pattern. It's going to all come together. It'll
Yeah.
click. I just need to give it more time, right? Does it sound like the stuff you were telling yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know why. I don't think when we talked about it before, it was in the context of being uncomfortable. However, it was a moment of you were already uncomfortable, but what was being asked of you was to get even more uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But the rapid growth that happened behind that, I think you decided
Oh
to
my
end that
gosh. Yeah.
relationship. You quit your job.
Moved to New
You
York
left
City.
where you were living. You moved to a new city. You were like, I'm just going to hit the reset button across the board. And it was when you came to New York at some point, not too long after, you met what is now your husband.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of shift and change. And so he said you were going to be okay, and you are more than okay. And so I also think this is for the benefit of someone who's listening who feels like I need to make a change, I need to make a shift, but I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I'm
And I think,
terrified.
and the thing is, I wish we talk about like I know for myself, but probably most, but you have to do it terrified, or you're never going to do it. And even to be completely honest, like when I look back at certain things, I'm like, who are you? Like that has like no, again, like the risk. Like I went to school for accounting. Like I was working at a state job. Like everything was very like very
Safe.
sure, very safe. But I knew myself, and I'm like, it's one of those things where it's like you just have to do it. So I was like, again, it made no sense. Yes, I had money saved, so like I could afford getting an apartment, like selling my car and all that, but I didn't have a job. And I did it all within, I think I gave my job like, but like it was like a 2 week of me coming to the conclusion of like I'm moving to the city, I'm quitting this job. I think I gave them like 3 or 4 weeks notice because I was just in the process of doing all of it. But within a month, like I was out. And
Of that word from the gentleman? Or when you made the
but
decision
like
to,
once, it was probably 2 months, honest. No, that was longer for that because that was
yeah,
around Christmas. So that was a much longer process of
process.
actually that.
Hmm.
But like once I did like end the relationship, I was like, I don't know whose life I'm living, but this is not anything I want, and I need to make a change. And I just, yeah, completely
Rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah.
and started a whole different life. But something I always dreamed of. Like even that's
Hmm.
interesting. Like I always loved New York City. Like
Right.
obsessed. It was always on my like
Dream
in
list.
another lifetime, like if I had
Mhm.
done it differently and like gone to school there or done something, but like the person I was with at the time, he like visiting it, but he was like, it drains me. Like I want nothing to do with the city. I was like, okay, well I can always just like visit. So to be honest, when we ended it, that was like the first thing that popped in my head. I'm like, you need to
Go live
do
the
something
dream
for
that you
yourself.
want.
Go live,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, we didn't plan on going here,
no.
but the discomfort and uncomfortableness of growth, this just is a little snippet and example. We also had planned to talk about releasing narratives, but I think we're going to save that for another conversation so that we can make sure that we allow what we've discussed today to kind of sit and sink in. So I would just say that takeaways: you can pay to change rooms, invest in yourself because it'll be worth it. Follow how you feel you are being led, and you just know. Um, one of the D's, we have these 7 D's that we came up with the development path of growth, where you take doubt to destiny. I don't think we'll do it with this topic, but one of the D's is discernment. And I was speaking to a friend the other day, and she said, as you're something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, but as your discernment sharpens, you're able to know when when you're being called to something, and two, you'll be able to identify when something is going to cause mission drift.
Mm,
So mission is A, and then something comes along and it's showing up to cause mission drift. And so sometimes feeling like I don't want to let go of the people that I've known so long, and I want to be, if we have it every Tuesday we go for brunch, but now I can't do that anymore. Every Saturday we do this, and all that stuff. Sometimes you got to say, I got to make some shifts and changes and adjustments. So takeaways: spend the money, invest in yourself, pay to get in different rooms, get the therapy
mm,
so you can work some things out. And if you have divine encounters, moments where you know that you're being called to do something different, allow yourself to really make sure that you're discerning something is shifting and changing, and lean into the discomfort and the uncomfortable growth. And the one thing I'll say is that there's discomfort in growth. There's also discomfort when you're staying where you're not supposed
mm.
to be.
Way more,
And
actually.
yeah, correct. And so they they feel different. When you're not where you're supposed to be, there's this like, I'm just not happy here. I know I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And you kind of know exactly what you need to let go of, but you're so terrified, if I do, who will I be without this, whatever
Hmm.
that is. Whereas the discomfort or uncomfortableness of growth is like, oh, this is hard. Maybe you're feeling imposter syndrome, and you're maybe feeling booked and busy. And so it's a different kind of uncomfortable. And I would say you want to have the discomfort that is from growth. You don't want to have the discomfort of you have stayed too long beyond where you are supposed to be. And they feel different. One feels kind of icky, and the other one feels like you feeling pressure, but you also feel like you're growing. So you can feel like I'm in the fire, but I can tell that God is like refining something in me, and He's purifying something, and He's making changes so that I can be a better version of myself. Dare I say, He's answering my prayer, right?
Hmm.
And so now I'm doing the things I want to do, and I'm like, why am I so, stretched? And it's because you're in a growth moment. So thank you for sharing the transparency of such an important little moment in your life. And we hope that this conversation was helpful in you leaning in towards the discomfort or the uncomfortableness of growth. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Bye.
Remember to unlock your queen
And unleash her dreams.